on? What's up, everyone? Come on in, come on in, come on in. This is Naja Young. And tonight we are going to be discussing Love Jones. Love Jones. Let me go ahead and put my phone on Do Not Disturb, or I'll attempt to, because now would be the time that everyone would try to. Hey, Miss Leanne, thanks for joining us. Now would be the time that everybody would try to call me, but I think I'm going to go ahead and let this rock. So, my name is Naja Young. For those of you who are new here or just joining us, I am going to be discussing Love Jones tonight. It's the Love Jones Redux. This is part of our Black Sex, Love, and Marriage series. My name is Naja Young. As I stated before, I'm a filmmaker, writer, director, and producer living in Atlanta, Georgia. And this fall, we have a film coming out called The Stranger. It's a short film. It'll be premiering at, hey, Janez, it'll be premiering at the Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival this September. Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival. Get your tickets now. My short film, The Stranger, will be there. My feature film actually premiered there several years ago. It was called Blood First. You can still watch it today on Tubi, Amazon, and Xbox Play as well. It's actually its second big release. And what I try to do when we talk about films is I want to talk about, hey, Imperium Opulentum. Glad to see you joining us. What I like to do is I like to talk about films as it relates to Black people and Black culture and how we are represented in those films. I myself am not a love story girl. I am not a love story girl. I got to be real with y'all. I'm going to confess something. And some of you all are going to be like, you lying. Today was the first day that I ever watched Love Jones all the way through. I know. Some of y'all going to try to come for my Black card. It's okay because you can't out-Black me, okay? Everybody is allowed a bit of a mistake. This film came out in 1997. So in 97, I think I was still living in Pittsburgh or had just moved back to Cleveland. And I got to be real. Like I said, I'm not a love story type of girl. So love stories have never been my thing. Even when I write films, the love story is always secondary. And that probably says a lot about me. However, I grew up in a house filled with boys. I have three younger brothers who are all like these macho kind of alpha men. Grew up in a household with a mom and a dad. And so my idea of relationships and even romantic love is kind of based on what I saw. And the type of love that I saw in my household wasn't touchy-feely, kissy. It was really that kind of love that it was like our bills are paid. Mama and daddy like to be around each other. It was more so they had a camaraderie that I think that was definitely built on mutual respect. And my mother wasn't like this soft, shy, demure type chick. She was very feminine. She still had a lot of feminine power, but she wasn't like soft and demure. You know what I'm saying? So me being soft and demure, not so much. I am sensitive. That's not to say I'm not sensitive. I am sensitive about a lot of things, and people are often shocked about what can hurt my feelings. However, um, I'm not some sort of shrinking violet and stuff. I can get shy like everybody else around men that I'm attracted to or like. But I also can just sort of, I'm just not that demure, submissive, kind of chick. And so love stories, Lifetime movies, none of that. It's not my thing. Plus, there are no zombies, no dragons, no, you know what I'm saying, supernatural kind of thing going on. And so I'm generally like, So what made me not watch Love Jones was really that, is I was like, it doesn't interest me in that sense. And Love Jones is such a great film. because it actually captures quite a time period in Black culture, that 1990s, late 90s time period. I was watching it and was like, oh my God, okay? Because I was there. I remember all of this stuff that was happening. And so Regina said, stop describing me. And I was like, I am not a Lifetime movies girl. That is not me. If you're joining us on Instagram, thank you. If you're joining us on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us here as well. Again, my name is Naja Young. We're going to get started talking about Love Jones, okay? And this is, again, part of our Black Sex, Love, and Marriage series. Notice the order: sex, love, marriage. Oftentimes when we talk about this subject matter, people always go love, sex, marriage. Well, let's be real. A lot of people ain't in love who are having sex. They just having sex. It's just a physical thing. Okay, so we're not going to sit here and pretend like everyone who has love, who has sex is in love with each other. They're not. It's a physical thing. And whether or not you believe someone should be in love, hey, that's your business. But let's be real. It's really sex, love, marriage. So tonight we're talking about Love Jones, which was directed by, I want to say Theodore Witcher. I just want to check his name because I don't want to disrespect that brother who did it, African-American male, who directed and wrote Love Jones. Hey, Mo. Glad to see you, Baba. Thank you for joining us this evening. I just want to make sure I got this brother's name correct. And I think it is Theodore Witcher. He directed and wrote Love Jones. And I am correct. Let's go ahead and share this also on my other Facebook page so we can get as many people as possible to join in. And so for those of you who hadn't seen or have never seen Love Jones, like me, there'll be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film, I suggest you watch the film before you participate. But part of the reason why I like to do these sort of film series is because Black film, to me, isn't being discussed enough. Right now, we are in a sort of renaissance, I think, of Black film, where we're starting to see a lot of different voices that are challenging the myths and stereotypes about Black film, and challenging the stereotypes about Black culture in general. Okay. And what I'm talking about is this idea that Blackness is a monolith, that all Black people live in certain areas, all Black people believe certain things, all Black people do certain things. Our culture, hey, what's up, cuz? Our culture is such that there's a lot of variances in there. Everybody's not Christian. Everybody is not, fatherless. Everybody didn't grow up in a low-income household. And that's not to say that those stories don't exist. They very much exist. However, that's not everyone's story. And everyone who went to college isn't bougie and stuck up either, okay? Or can't relate to people in the inner city. I went to college. I have a master's degree. Other family members of mine have master's degrees and things like that. And we grew up in the hood alongside of everyone else. So that's what I'm talking about. So right now there's a renaissance in film, I think, where we have more varied voices in film as it relates to Black people. And I'm talking specifically about films that are written and directed by Black people. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to look at the way that we look at each other, that we view our romantic relationships. So let's get into it. Mosa Sai says it was the first major film that mentioned Orisha, and he's talking about Love Jones, and that's the film that we're discussing tonight. So we are definitely going to get into that. We're definitely going to go there. So Love Jones was released in 1997. It was written and directed by, hey, Brandon. It was written and directed by Theodore Witcher. And the interesting thing, or I think the sad thing about it, is we really don't have another film from this brother, another feature film. And I was reading an article in which he stated that, he just couldn't find support for his films. I do think the film was a bit ahead of its time as far as the subject matter. Um, and now we have a lot more Black love stories. Let's just be real. We have dramas on television that are dedicated to relationships and relationships specifically around Black people, centered around Blackness and Black people. So we have that on television. But in 1997, we didn't really have that. We did have living single comedy, girlfriends comedy. We had these comedies and things like that, but a drama centered around Black people and relationships, not so much. If I'm wrong, please let me know, correct me. But to my recollection, we really didn't have that in the late 1990s. The film is a great time capsule for those of us who experienced 1997. For those of you all, Christian and Brandon, who I know good and damn well were not born at this time. Or you may have been born, you probably were an infant at this time. If you want to know what those late 90s were about, please check out Love Jones. So I think one of the reasons that stopped me from watching Love Jones when it came out in 97 was that opening scene in The Sanctuary, which was the bar that everyone hung out in. And The Sanctuary had this sort of spoken word night, I guess, that Darius was a part of. And Nina, played by Nia Long, and her friend Lisa Nicole Carson came into the bar, and Darius Love Hall, played by Lorenz Tate, performs this poem. I think it's called Blues to Nina, Blues for Nina. And in the film, he references the Yoruba goddesses or Orishas, which are gods, which is a Yoruba word for like deities, gods. And he references Yemanja and Oshun. And for me, being a practitioner, a person who grew up in traditional Yoruba spirituality, living in the United States, when I saw that, I like instantly eye roll and I was like, peace, I'm out. First of all, I didn't really care for spoken word poetry. At that point in 97, everybody thought they should be a poet. And the whole music in the background and people speaking like this the entire time was sort of getting on my damn nerves. And I couldn't take it. Then when they invoked the Orishas and started talking about, he said, "Are you Yemanja?" Oops, no. I think it's Oshun. I was like, oh God. And the reason why I have to say, oh God, is because around 1997 is when you have a sort of, it's a part of this awakening in the Black community where people who were maybe raised Christian, Black people, were sort of exploring alternate styles of spirituality and religion. So they started reading books like Metu Neter, and started reading books by John Mason about the Orishas and Santeria and stuff like that, Vodun, really trying to connect back to their spirituality, um, really trying to connect back to their spirituality, traditional African spirituality, the spirituality of their ancestors. And what I found during that time as a person who was raised in this is that people weren't reading deeply. It was just sort of surface. It was like the cool, in hip thing to say, but they really didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And so it sort of kind of pissed me off. And because for me, my religion, my spiritual beliefs aren't a gimmick. And that's what I didn't, identify with. Like, I was like, we're not a fad. This is something real. And I felt like for a lot of people, this sort of delving deep into traditional African spirituality was just a fad for them. And so it made me kind of walk away from the film. And to be honest, seeing this film now at my ripe old age, um, Actually, it makes me appreciate the film more. I was too hasty to walk away. Yeah, there were some corny things in there, but the film came out in 1997. I was about 24 years old. You do the math. I ain't gonna tell you how old I am, but you do the math. Okay. So I kind of felt like in 97, at 24 years old, this film is definitely a 24 years old love story. Definitely that. Definitely that. Yes, most of the science says the film, it definitely has some ABC kind of rhymes to it. So yeah, I want you all to go back to your 24-year-old self or however old you were when you saw this film and think about the types of relationships you were having at this time. It's very reminiscent of that. Um, One of the things I did appreciate about the film is that um, no violence. You know what I'm saying? If we talk about Black films of the 1990s, real talk, we talking about Boys in the Hood. We talking about, um, I think Juice was in the 90s. I know Boys in the Hood was in the 90s. We're talking about Menace to Society, also starring Lorenz Tate. We're talking about South Central. A lot of films that showed a lot of violence in the inner city. Um, it's a lot of damn violence. Black folks killing each other and just tragedy all around. Love Jones was refreshing because, it was our generation, because Nia Long and Lorenz Tate are a part of my generation, our generation, and it was about love. And the film is very much an old school style love story, and that's what I appreciate from the director and the writer Theodore Witcher. Um, oh, Fresh is another film that came out then, which is one of my all time favorites. Um, but Love Jones stands out because it was about young people in love. Mo Better Blues, I have to look at where that film came out. But Mo Better Blues, Denzel, Wesley, and those guys, Spike, and Spike Lee wrote and directed Mo Better Blues, was another love story. And I believe it came out in the 90s as well, late 90s. But this film, in and of itself, was about my generation, those of us who were in our 20s then. And it was about us having a romantic love story. Now, when you watch Love Jones, it's very reminiscent of an old school love story. The way it is shot, the cinematography, whenever you watch a film and you're like, look at the way the shots kind of blend into one another, look at the way that the shots are framed. We're talking about cinematography. And that cinematography in Love Jones is simply beautiful. And what helps the film sell the beautiful cinematography is, of course, Nina, played by Nia Long, being a photographer, right? Even though we don't see a whole lot of her photography in the film, which is interesting in and of itself, we do see beautiful cinematography. The opening montage that we see um, is quite something else. The opening montage to Deion Ferris's "They Say I'm Hopeless, like a penny with a hole in it." No, I ain't gonna sing that song. But when I tell you they wore that song out, this is also right around the time that Maxwell came out and his Urban Hang Suite. And so in the film, they also have Maxwell. They also have a song by some Lauryn Hill in there. And so just a tiny bit of a snippet from Mary J. Blige's "I'm the Only One You Need." That's why I call this film a time capsule, because this film really does represent the late 90s. Most Society says, it was nice to see some representation of the Orisha. I was 12, but it was a first for me, even as cheesy as some of the parts were. Um, and he says he was being called at the time an African booty scratcher. So it did me some good to see that mention of the Orisha and not in a negative light. I understand completely I got my brother by a few years. So, like I said, I was in my 20s when this film came out. Um, and prior to this film, of course, as far as mention of the Orishas in a positive way or African spirituality, for me, it was Daughters of the Dust, which members of our community were a part of, which was directed by the incredible Ms. Julie Dash, who inspired me to become a filmmaker. Um, and when you wanted to see reflections of African spirituality that was not in a negative light, it was like grasping at straws. So even us watching, and this is truly an aside, hearing Miami Sound Machines, The Rhythm Is Gonna Get You, when they had that breakdown in there and it was like, oh, why, we knew that that was really them singing an African spiritual song in there. And so those of us who grew up in this religion and this culture, when we heard that, we was like, hey, it was a pop song. It was about the rhythm is going to get you. And even if other people didn't know that's what they were referring to, we knew that was what it was referring to. So uh, we also had, of course, I'm talking about a pop song, but in salsa films and things like that, salsa movies and things like that, we also had, mention of the Orishas. And even if you go back and look at I Love Lucy, hold on one second. Hey, can you grab the door? Olufemi. I can't stand this. Hold on one second, y'all. This is real live. Okay, so this is how you know we live. 1 second. Oh, look. Why didn't you get the door? Can I have, hey, how are you? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You left the nice one in the car. Thank JD. He saw it. And I'm back. Welcome to my world. See, this is why I should have kicked people out of my house before I started recording. Hey, Jay White, that's a fellow filmmaker right there, who just joined us. I'm sorry for that, y'all. I had to step away because Black people can't hear the door when they visiting me and then leave the lights on for their car. Really? What are we? All right. So back to Love Jones. Sorry, y'all interrupted my flow. They interrupted my flow. All right, so we are talking about Love Jones. What I think is wonderful about the film is that they had a club called The Sanctuary. It was highly artistic. The Sanctuary. And let's look at the word sanctuary. Sanctuary is a place of peace, is a place of rest. It's a place that you can let your hair down and be yourself. And so the poetry club, the club that they went to was called The Sanctuary. All right. And there we are introduced to Darius Love Hall. Even the name Darius Love Hall is poetic, right? And he's a writer, played by Lorenz Tate. It's poetic. It speaks to the heart. Love Hall. So then we have Nina. Nina, I want to say her last name is Malone, but I'm not exactly sure. Nina is a photographer. One of the things about the film that stood out to me is the fact that they used so much things that we would consider old fashioned nowadays. But in 97, I had to think about it just now. Like we didn't have so much, cell phones were not a thing for the average person. Bill Bellamy is in the film, and Bill Bellamy had a pager. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, children. People had pagers back then. We didn't have phones at our fingertips. Okay, people had pagers, and you would call someone's pager, put your number in, and maybe a code, and then they would call you back. That's how we communicated with one another. Also, the use of payphones. Now, if I had to put my face on a payphone to call somebody, child, we would all die because the germs would kill me right off the damn bat. Okay. Nina is taking she's a photographer, and she uses a black and white camera, an analog camera. So instead of digital cameras, which digital cameras were around then, but they were cost prohibitive, meaning they were so expensive the average person could not buy them. I think I got my first digital camera in the early 2000s. I also have done photography with an analog camera using actual real black and white film. And I used to develop it as well when I attended college. So that's why I look at this film and I'm like, God, it is such a time capsule. And I graduated from college in 1995. So I got my start on an actual video camera that you had to put the whole tape in. And I got my start shooting actual photography on black and white film, and then going into a dark room and developing it. That's some of the stuff that we kind of miss in the film. With Nina being a photographer, is seeing her actually develop the film. We don't really get a shot of that, or her in a dark room doing those types of things. Darius, on the other hand, he is typing he's writing a book, and he's writing a book on a typewriter. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, hell no. In 1997, y'all, we had computers. Okay. So I can't think of a actual writer in 97 that would have written their book strictly on a typewriter. Now, some people might have done that, but those people are, they consider themselves purists. But those are people that I also consider to be people who are doing it for show, not for real life. And here's what I mean for show. You don't have a backup. If you lose that copy of your book, it's just gone forever because you're just typing on a typewriter. Okay. And if you make a mistake, you got to take the paper out and start all over again. I don't know who in the hell you think is going to do all that. Not if you're a serious writer who plans on publishing a book and being a commercial writer. You need to have a backup of your book. And so in 97, we had computers. Even I had a little cheap word processor. Brother used to make them. And, it had a screen down here, and it press print, and it came out the top of the thing. So I'm like, look, we were using computers back then. But of course, Darius Love Hall is using a typewriter to write his masterpiece. And the reason why I'm talking about their professions of being a photographer and a writer is because what I see is that our filmmaker, Theodore Witcher, truly respects artists, and he loves artists so much so that he has this romantic notion of what an artist is and what a true artist looks like. So it's image. It's more so about image than it is about substance, in my opinion. Even though we got to experience Darius's poems, his poetry, but the film doesn't go into what his book is actually about. It also doesn't really illustrate or show us Nina's photography. We know she's a photographer, but we don't really see we don't know what she's interested in documenting. And so when you meet an author or you meet a photographer, or even a filmmaker like myself, we have certain things that we're interested in, that we want to see, that we document, that we write about. And in this film, I didn't really get a sense of that from these characters. And you might say to yourself, well, that was secondary or even tertiary. But the film is really about love and relationships. Okay. So the film centers us on their love affair. And one of the things I like that it brought up was, it was like the first night they went on a date, they ended up sleeping with each other and having sex. And Nina first says, no, because, what would I be if I let you basically hit or have sex the first night? And they end up having sex anyway that first night. But it's funny because that is a conversation I feel that women have with themselves. And one thing I appreciate about the character of Nina is that she was sexually reassured. Like, she reassured herself and was okay with doing what she wanted to do in that moment. And that was something, a take that we didn't often see in films. I'm sure some people would argue that Nina was a hoe, because Nina had sex with him on the first date, and she went out on a date with his homeboy, played by Bill Bellamy. But we never saw them have sex. We don't know if they had sex or not. And truthfully, Nina and Darius weren't in a relationship, so truly she could date whomever she wanted. But we see Nina being secure in her sexuality enough that she was cool with just having sex with Darius and not putting a label on the relationship, which actually blew Darius's mind, because Darius really honestly couldn't take that Nina wasn't tripping over him. Nina wasn't tripping over him. Nina was like, I mean, we cool, we just chilling, you know how we do. And he was kind of like taken aback by that. If you watch the film, he was taken aback by that. Darius didn't know quite how to deal with that, because in films, women who do that are often portrayed in a very crass way, who has no morals or no moral compass. And she's also portrayed as a woman who doesn't care about herself. She'll just sleep with anybody. And we didn't get that looking at this film, and looking at Nina. Nina was self-assured. She was secure in her sexuality. She questioned it a little bit, which I think is kind of normal, especially being a young woman growing up in this society where you're taught like good girls don't. From the moment that you come into the world, good girls don't. Good girls don't have sex. If you was a good girl, you wouldn't have done it. You had sex too early. You did. Yes, that's how goofy society seems to me. You had sex too early. You can't. Good girls don't do X, Y, and Z. And so it's like, come on. This film challenges that, and I really appreciate it. It's refreshing. In the film, you also have Isaiah Washington, who plays a friend of theirs. Even though I look at the film and I'm like, Isaiah Washington looks at least 5 to 10 years older than the other actors in the film. So I don't know about all that. I feel like we might have, it is one of those things where it's like, maybe not, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm saying? Like, he just didn't seem to match. And he was the only one who was married as well. His marriage breaks down in the film, but we never find out why the marriage breaks down. All we know is that his woman walks out on him and says, you need to grow up. You need to mature. I don't know why he needs to grow up and mature, but apparently he does. The other thing that I notice is that, it's a cadre of young men primarily, but they have a female friend in the group. I can't think of her name right now. I want to say it was Simone, but I could be incorrect. And she was also, to me, she serves as the moral compass for the men, the larger group of men, which is Isaiah Washington, Bill Bellamy, another brother, and Lorenz Tate. And so she's the woman of the crew, and she kind of serves as like this moral compass for them. She's there to check them on their sexism. She's there to challenge their notions about love and things like that. And so I thought that was a good kind of counterbalance. Nina in the film, she has a relationship with Khalil Kain, her ex, and we see her try to rekindle that relationship. And Khalil Kain, for those of you who don't remember, he was in Juice with Tupac. And the thing about the relationship between Khalil and Nia's characters was that it just didn't feel real to me. There was no spark, no chemistry between them. I can't see them having ever dated. And when you're casting a film, it's those sort of things that you kind of have to look at. Do these people look like they would ever have been in a relationship with one another? And I didn't feel like they had ever been in a relationship with one another. He was in New York and she came to New York, and we see her get turned down for this job. And she comes home and they're arguing about cereal. Somebody ate all his toasted oats. And I was just like, okay. I mean, yeah, we have arguments do pop off about cereal. I get that in relationships. However, I just was like, the scene for me was lackluster. Their relationship was lackluster. It seemed to lack, and I understand that part of the reason why they broke up is that they didn't have this chemistry anymore. But in the film, you couldn't tell that they ever had chemistry with one another. Um, so Imperium Opulentum says they were the perfect society couple, but I mean, society for who, where? They were in their 20s. They definitely come across as extremely young in their 20s. Um, and in Hollywood, only in Hollywood, do you have these uber successful 20-year-olds who are making all this money. And in the film, they're not clearly not making a lot of money. Looking at the way that Khalil's apartment was decorated in New York, it just looked like, honestly, something that was thrown together. It looked like it was being shot in a hotel room just by the art on the walls and things like that. So let me give you all a secret. When you're shooting on a low budget film, you will try to turn something into something else in a heartbeat. And so it looks like they shot that in a hotel room, or like something that's like think about a homestay, home inn, or something like that, where they have a small kitchenettes and then they have the room. That's what, and the artwork, because it was nondescript artwork on the wall. Meanwhile, when you saw them when she was supposedly in Chicago, right, and she's house sitting for some unknown person in this beautiful loft style apartment, which is very also late 90s, early 2000s, because everybody wanted a loft style apartment. Hell, I want a loft style apartment right now, or a loft, right now. But that was all the rage, was these lofts. Oh, and so she's staying in this loft that we know she clearly couldn't afford, because her photography career wasn't taking off like that. And apparently she had gotten fired from her assistant job, right? For the white photographer. And then Darius, I still don't know how this brother made money. He quit some job. I don't know what job, but he quit some job. And think about Darius. The film, he's riding a motorcycle. He has a messenger bag that he carries. They go to the record shop. Also, very, very, very reminiscent of another time. Um, he drives an old school bike. He's like this old soul. He wants a retro, he wants a typewriter. That's even retro for the time period. He doesn't listen to CDs. He has albums. He likes the feel of an old album. And when I think about these things now, and I understand that at the time it was new and fresh in 97, but I've seen this trope played out in so many different films, especially love stories, where it's like, he's this old soul, he's on a motorcycle. It's these romantic tropes. And these tropes existed before Love Jones, they exist after Love Jones. But in a Black led film, you didn't see this sort of thing. And I think what a lot of people love about Love Jones was that it just feels romantic, right? It has all the things happening at the right time, at the right moment for people. You got the conversation in the rain. You got the raindrops. You got the passionate love making on the first night. You got this love and this passion between Lorenz and Nia that is palpable on the screen, where you have to question at some point, damn, I wonder if they really dated, right? You can feel that passion between them. And again, because the film is shot so beautifully by Ernest Holtz, I had to look up who the cinematographer was. You're like, it transports you into a different time and a different space. It taps into your fantasies about what love is supposed to be about, especially when you're in your 20s. Hell, some of us in our 40s and 50s still want that kind of love, that kind of hot, passionate, white hot love, right? Where you all can't get enough of each other. And then you break up because of something petty. Where it's like, why is this woman calling you on the phone? We never see them have a full conversation about who the chick is who called him on the phone. We assume it's his ex, but we don't hear, like, we don't see him like defending himself or anything. And even after she went out with Bill Bellamy, he never questions her about, did they have sex, or he never seems to question her at all about why she went out with Bill Bellamy. Which is, I guess, cool, but in real life, let's be real, they would have had a true conversation about that, even an argument perhaps, but they would have definitely discussed it. So those were some areas of opportunity, I think, in the screenplay. Because even 20-year-olds would have had that conversation with one another, or 20 somethings would have had that conversation with one another. Darius tried to seem like he was secure, but he also was also very sensitive, right? He tried to put on a brave face and act like, hey, Coach Boone. He tried to act like he had like he didn't care that much about Nina leaving. He tried to act like, Bill Bellamy dating Nina didn't hurt him and stuff like that, but clearly it did. And I liked the way that the filmmaker actually tackled that, because men don't really discuss their feelings like women do, right? But in not showing him go deep about his feelings for Nina, it also showed how much he was hurt, how much he did love Nina, and how much he wanted to be with Nina. And he was trying to save face in front of his friends. And I feel like that's what a lot of young men do, right? They try to save face in front of their friends. It didn't hurt. No, I'm cool. She can do whatever she want to do. You know what I'm saying? I don't even care about nothing like that. And you're just like, oh, okay, didn't hurt. Okay, all right. And then when they walk away, when a woman walks away and goes to someone else, brother be in the corner limping, holding his chest like, oh, Lord. Oh, I can't believe she left me, right? Nina, on the other hand, like, the film didn't really have her going deep into her feelings about Darius either. And maybe it's because the filmmaker was a man. Maybe he just couldn't imagine what that conversation would be like between Nina and her friends. But because, we all discuss relationships, and with women, at least with my women friends, even in my 20s, like, we talk about our relationships. We go deep into those relationships. We're analyzing, we're discussing, hell, we being private investigators, right? Whereas in this film, we don't so much have that. What we have is in Love Jones is we have a love story. Girl meets boy, boy meets girl. They fall in love, have passionate sex. What's up, Grind Mode 412? Glad to see you here. They have passionate sex. They don't define their relationship with one another. And then they lose one another over a stupid argument, which to me, that argument, it just wasn't as fiery and as passionate as I know those arguments can get. So I really felt like if I were a director directing that scene, we would have to work that scene a little bit more, because it lacked the passion I feel like you have in that moment where you think the other person is not being faithful, and all of these things, and the horrible things that we can say to one another, quite frankly. So the film lacked that kind of passion, but then we have her go off and, she, gets her career started, this big break, and she's shooting a campaign for Vibe, and he's publishing his book, which we still don't know what the hell the book is about. And, she comes back and she's in Chicago and she does a poem because she had never performed a poem before and he wanted her to do a poem. And she does that and Darius leaves. And then he stops her. She's about to get into the cab and they're in the rain and they're talking. Yeah, that's some romantic shit. I can't even say, and I'm not a romance girl, but that was some romantic shit. And let's be real, if you've ever had that happen, your heart does go, it just kind of flutters. I did have somebody chase me down in the rain before, and a friend of mine was there holding the umbrella, and she just looked absolutely disgusted because she was like, oh my God, they're so corny. We were staring at each other like we were in Love Jones. Just, oh my goodness. He chased me down in the rain, y'all. It was some real shit. It was cool. However, however, it's one of those things where it's like now, 30 years later, I'm like, that shit was so, oh my God, so corny because nothing really came of it. But it was the gesture, I guess, that counts. And one thing about this film is it lets men and women fantasize about that relationship, that white hot, passionate, or red hot, I should say, passionate relationship that we can have with one another. Where you feel like you don't want to be with the person, but you can't not be with them. And when you get older, that shit gets old. Real talk. You be like, listen, all these ramifications, all this going through this, that, and the other to be with one another. I love you. I can't be with you. Stay, go. All of that gets old after a while. You just be like, hey, look, you love me or you don't. Like, you in or you leaving. What's happening here? But when you're in those 20s, that's a 20-something-year-old relationship. So that's what kind of makes me appreciate the film now at this age. And like I said, I had never seen the film before today. I ain't gonna front. I only saw that first 5 minutes and was like, I don't like this. It's corny. I'm out. But as an adult watching this film, it definitely reminded me of my 20s. It definitely reminded me of the beauty of that time of the mid to late 90s where the brothers were wearing, this is when a lot of people started locking their hair, started their little lock journey. The brothers had the tiny locks. This is when people wanted to be deeper. They wanted to go deeper than just being on the surface. They started really, this is post that era of hip hop where people, well, not really, it's not really post this era, but this is when even hip hop was more conscious. Okay, had a lot of Black consciousness in hip hop during this time. What's up, Bobby James? So we had a lot of things going on, and this film reflects that. There were some times, though, when I was watching the film where I felt like the music was incongruous with that scene, but I understand. So when I say that, what I'm talking about is instead of doing music that was more popular in 1997, he used a lot of jazz in the film as the score. So there are a lot of jazz artists being played in the film. One, it was probably more economical to get the rights to play that jazz. And two, I think what he was setting us up for was the romance of it all. Not so much the sexuality of it or not so much about the sex, but the sensuality, right? So that's where they chose to go with jazz, right? As opposed to some Jodeci, you know what I'm saying? Or as opposed to, Diggable Planets or something like that. It just kind of went more toward this sort of jazzy, romantic, focus on the scene, let's focus on each other than focusing on the words, right? So I kind of understood that. There were some moments, though, I was like, oh, this song from the late 90s would have been perfect right here. But again, being a filmmaker and having gone through the process of securing the rights to a film, to a song, to have it played in my film, child, it is expensive. In 2014, I think I went 30 seconds of a Anthony Hamilton song, and it was going to cost us $25,000. $20,000 if we were going to use a song by an artist who was signed to a label, and that artist did not have the rights to his own music. So that was in 2014. I can't imagine what it would be now in 2025. So what I'm talking about is Love Jones. I have a question for you all right now. Do you think Nina and Darius would still be together in 2025? Do you think Nina and Darius would still be together in 2025? Or do you think they would have called it quits? When I think about Nina and Darius, I don't know. Oh, Imperium Opulentum thinks that Nina and Darius would still be together in 2025. Maybe I'm a cynic. Maybe I'm just pessimistic. I don't know. I do not know. I think this is a couple that had at least a few more. She said, nope, it was divine. She thinks their relationship was divine. And Love Jones. What say you all? Do you think Nina and Darius will still be together in 2025, married with kids? I don't know. It's hard to say. I think that, first of all, being a full-time artist, like your girl right here, I think it's it can be difficult. There are lots of ups and downs in our careers. One minute we are, in it, we're doing well, our career is going well. The next minute we're not. We may be struggling. I mean, look at Theodore Witcher. We haven't seen this brother basically since Love Jones, and this brother should have at least had a 3-picture deal. He should have at least had a 3-picture deal, and he didn't. He couldn't find more full-time work in Hollywood, and so that's the kind of thing that we have to consider. I think this brother definitely, I don't know where he is in the universe. I tried to look him up, and I couldn't find him. I couldn't find anything new that he had worked on. All I can say is that, he was definitely owed a lot more films by Hollywood. But this is why it's important for us to make films independently, because when we depend on someone else to give us our shot, when we depend on someone else to tell our stories, they don't see the value in them like we do. So that's why it's important for you all to support independent film, independent artists, independent filmmakers, okay? And that means you can go to our Patreon. You can definitely go to our Patreon. My Patreon is up on YouTube and Facebook. You can support us on Patreon. You can send us donations on Cash App. We'll take it. And this all helps to further our work as filmmakers. You can go see our work. Go to film festivals. Support your local film festivals. Like I said, Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival in September. We should be there. Our film Stranger will be playing there. My first feature film played there over a decade ago, and that film is Blood First. You can watch it on Tubi, but it was released on Amazon Prime, Xbox Play, Google Play, all of those platforms. Every time you go and you watch one of these independent films, you're supporting independent art, okay? And I can appreciate, I may not be like 100% like this is the best film ever made, but I'll tell you what, I appreciate the process, because it takes a lot of work even to make a bad film. It really does. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of dedication. And if you're interested right now in writing your own film, if you're interested in learning how to direct a film, if you're interested in finding your voice in an art form, that's what I'm here to do. Visit my website. If you're on Instagram, I ask you all to go ahead and visit my website, www.orumilasdaughter.com. You can go to my bio and click the link. And I have a variety of services where I help people find their voice in the art form that they want to express themselves in. So whether that's a novel, whether that's in a film, I'm here. I'm your girl for that. And if you're an arts organization and you're looking for arts classes for your students, please go ahead and reach out to me. Hey, Brandon, thanks for joining us over there. Brandon went ahead and put up the different links in our chat over there in Instagram. You guys, this has been a wonderful evening. I'm glad that you guys joined me. What film should we discuss next week? Y'all keep choosing stuff that I'm like, dang, I want to discuss Mo Better Blues. So I can't lie. I am leaning toward Mo Better Blues, which if you loved Love Jones, you should love Mo Better Blues. written and directed by Spike Lee, starring that young, handsome, fine Denzel Washington and a young, handsome, fine Wesley Snipes. So that's the film that I'm leaning toward, but let me know what film you think we should be discussing next week. My name is Naja Young, and I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And if you have any questions, concerns, or anything you want to add to the conversation, feel free to get at me. Love you. Bye.